So you've already learned about characters and integers, but you probably don't know that in reality, a character is just a small integer. They're pretty much interchangeable. And I can prove this by printing out an integer as a character, or printing out a character as an integer. Now let's see how this works. First, let's print out a character as an integer. So we're going to be printing out an integer. And let's give it the letter A. Now let's see what this gives us. And it gives us the value of 97. So the character A, the compiler knows that this has a value of 97. So if we were to print out this 97 as a character, it should give us the opposite. It should give us A. There we go. So the compiler keeps track of what characters have what values. Now, what's the greatest value that a character can have? A character uses 1 byte of memory, and the way you can determine how many possible values there are for any data type is to take the number of bits, and you take the number 2 and you raise it to the number of bits that you have. So as we know, a byte is 8 bits, so 2 to the 8th power is 256. So 1 byte has 256 possible values, and therefore there are only 256 possible characters that we can use in C. Now, a character, as I said, is just a small integer, so we should be able to print out all of the characters from 0 to 255 using an integer and printing it out like this using the %C. So let's write a for loop that prints out all of the characters so that you can get an idea of what you have to work with. We'll create an integer I, and our for loop set I to 0 while I is less than 255. And we're going to increment I by 1 every time the loop runs. And in the body of the loop, we're just going to print out the character format, the character value of this integer. So %C and I, which is the integer. And we're not going to put a new line after this here because I think it'll be easier to see all the different characters if they're all run together. So we'll run this and we'll see what output we get. Okay, if you have your speakers on, which I really hope you do if you're watching this tutorial, you probably just heard a beeping sound. And that is because one of these characters, when it's printed out to the terminal, instead of showing up as something, it actually just makes your computer beep, which is a cool feature. So you see all this gibberish, but there's also stuff we know, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, in uppercase and lowercase. We have our numbers and some mathematical signs. Everything, we have got all the normal stuff that we use, but there's also a bunch of extra stuff that we don't normally use. And there's one more thing that you should know. If you remember from a couple tutorials ago, I talked about the null terminator character, and I said that every string is ended with the null terminator character. This way, if you're working with strings, when you read this null terminator character, you can tell that you're at the end of the string. Well, the null terminator character is the character that has the integer value of 0. So that would be this blank one here that didn't print out. And the reason it didn't print out is because it's actually a blank character. It doesn't show up at all. In fact, if you see on this line here, there's probably a lot of characters like that. And these characters are called non-printable characters, and that's because they were used in the olden days to configure printers. When you wanted to print a document, they would use these special characters to tell the printer how to format text. But we don't really use them in the same way anymore. So this null terminator character is just 0, and we will use that later when we're creating functions to determine the lengths of strings and things like that. Now there's one more thing that I should probably tell you before I end this tutorial, and that is you can add and subtract from characters. So if I'm going to print out the letter A, I can take this letter A and I can say, don't print out this character, but print out the one that's 1 above it. So if I print out A plus 1, it should print out B. There we go. So because characters are just integers and vice versa, we can do mathematical operations on them just as if they were integers. Alright, well, I think that's all you need to know about characters. Characters are really just integers. There's only 256 of them, and the very first one, the character represented by the integer 0, is what we call the null terminator that you already learned about. That's it for now, and I hope to see you again in the next tutorial.